This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead. I'm Seth Merrill, live in the studio. Seth Merrill of Equidaily, joined by Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races, live via phone. And of course, it was a big weekend of racing, both at Fairgrounds and over at Gulfstream. And we will get some live reports from Gulfstream because Mr. Bick down in Florida. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Seth. Good morning, everybody.
And give us a little report, just a little vacation report. Let us all live vicariously from you. I talked to Ron Nicoletti on Friday. He described the weather as perfect. How was your week down in Florida? How was the weather?
It's good. We've decided not to come back.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you a bit. Although the last couple of days have been pretty good, but we're going back. By the end of the week, it's going to be in teens again. So, but you picked a good week to head down there. So hopefully everything worked out all right. We'll talk in a few minutes about some of the races. Obviously, a nice card yesterday, both on the stakes side and some of the undercard races. We'll hit on those as we move along. Do I also want to touch on what's the buzz down there with this Rainbow Six? Now, I know once they hit about 600,000, I've played maybe every other day. I've put together a little bit of a ticket, and I have. I said once it got to 600 and certainly up to $1 million, this Rainbow Six, which again is a jackpot bet, it pays the whole pool if only one person has a winning ticket. But once you get up to 600 and now over $1 million, even the consos, when there are multiple tickets, pays pretty well. And yesterday, admittedly, this was not an easy sequence to have, but the 20-cent bet, and it's a 20-cent base bet, 20 cent paid $36,000. And again, it was a tough sequence. $9, $35, $4, a couple of $11 winners, and they wound the day up on a DQ with an $80 winner in there. But still, it's up over $1 million. What's the buzz like there for the Rainbow Six?
Well, I don't know if you want to just start with the overview or go right to what transpired yesterday, because there is somebody walking around with a ticket who was live to the horse that was disqualified.
Oh, I did not hear that.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the biggest story, and it's going to create the usual catcalls and carrying on from all of the tin hat crowd. And in fact, to me, even just in terms of the raw element of the disqualification, I didn't even think they had reached the wire. And I turned to a guy next to me who said, "Oh, I really needed the Eddie Pleaso horse." I said, "Well, you're going to get put up." I said, "Because this horse is coming down." The Contessa horse under Luis Saez, who had a great day and, of course, won the Fountain of Youth 25 minutes earlier with an incredible ride. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Wildcat Red absolutely outrode Javier Castellano, who had his own fabulous day. But it was Luis Saez was the difference maker in the Fountain of Youth, and he was the difference maker here because he kept drifting out. He drifted out 3-4 pads and absolutely impeded the 35-1 shot. And it's pretty funny that the horse of Contessa's that gets taken down was, a much lower price, was 11, 12, 15-1, and the 35-1 shot that you would think would be the kind of horse that would trip the Rainbow Six jackpot payoff, but in fact it was this Colanito of Contessa's. So it took about 20 minutes or so for the realization to start to emerge that in fact there had been this live ticket. And it's interesting because about 4 days ago, Gulfstream earlier this week, instead of announcing to the crowd in the nightcap, ahead of the nightcap, what the status was, they had made the decision to make it more mysterious and to then announce after the results went official. So that changed, I think, on Thursday, because they had been telling everybody how many tickets, and they still are saying how many tickets are alive after the first, I think, 4 or maybe even after the 5th leg. But they wanted to make it a little bit more mysterious. HRTV happened to have the feed for the graphics package, and so they went on the air and did say that there's 3 horses that would pay out. And they didn't I don't believe that they said which, that Caden Bradar said which of the three horses were live. But it came out pretty quickly that, in fact, somebody had a ticket that would have paid $1.2 million. And so it's got to be absolutely, just gut-ripping. I mean, for me, I thought that the call was an absolute no-brainer. Plenty of people said, could have gone either way. And maybe you'll show it probably tomorrow on Racing Across America. But right away on Twitter and all the other moronic feeds, they arranged it so that the thing continued. I mean, it's just stupidity.
Yeah, I agree, though. I thought it was a good call. I didn't know that that was a lot. That is a tough beat. But I agree. And usually when I'm looking at DQs, I kind of put it percentage-wise. It's 50-50 or it's 60-40 in one direction as opposed to the other. I would have put that maybe 75-25 in favor of the DQ, maybe even 80-20, because clearly he herds them out. 2 or 3 passes. That to me was pretty clear. So I have no problems at all with the DQ. But still, if you had that ticket, that had to be a killer.
I can tell you that I do not have the greatest perspective when I'm looking at the pan shot on TV or when I'm even watching live. A lot of times, I can't tell. When you're watching live on a pan shot, you very frequently, you can see if you watch the jockey's caps and you're watching the rail. You sometimes get to see that they're coming out at an angle. I don't pick up on that as well as some people do. But this one, they were 50 yards from the line. And I said, this horse is coming down. I mean, to me, it just seemed obvious. Anyway, it's too bad that both that story and clearly set a story regarding the glibness of the racetrack are going to dominate what should have been a day and what still is a day that had tremendous racing. And unfortunately, very often down here you get, these kinds of days where horses get out on the front end and can't be reeled in. And it shouldn't take away from, Normandy Invasion's terrific return or Constitution's win or Global Strike or anybody else, and certainly not in the stake. Both the Philly stake, Only for You, and in the tremendous duel between Wildcat Red and General A-Rod. But let's be honest, it compromised horses like Top Billing, who had to come from, well back and had to try to, make up ground on a racetrack that is unforgiving in that regard. And there is a subplot to this, of course, because Jack Wolf and Todd Pletcher and Don Lucarelli with the Starlight winner, the Intense Holiday, they got out of town and they went to a racetrack where you get to reel in, down a 1,300-foot stretch to the wire, and it worked for Intense Holiday. So there's the perfect juxtaposition. And the other thing, Seth, at a mile and 16th at Gulfstream, you're also dealing with the early finish line.
Yeah.
So you have even less chance to reel in leaders. So there's a little bit of a compromise aspect, and I think there's some people that are piling on about that. But overall, the performances and the horses that won, they weren't inappropriate winners. They just were certainly aided by the racetrack the way it was yesterday.
Yeah, and we'll hit on those specifically in a couple of minutes as we take a look at some of those races. But yeah, there are some horses now that maybe, as you say, I think they're going to turn out to be legitimate, but you wonder what they're going to do maybe away from Gulfstream. So we'll talk about that specifically in a couple. I want to touch on some of the news stories from the week. One of the biggest news stories, obviously, and we talked about on your radio show on Wednesday, the announcement by Del Mar that they're going to go to dirt for the 2015 season. And it has gotten all kinds of comments for and against from the pundits and from the fans. I pulled up Steve Christ had his article, Tread Wearing Thin on the Synthetic Era. He talks a little bit about with Del Mar now switching to dirt. That kind of leaves Keeneland as the major racetrack unto itself out there. With the synthetic surface. They had a Breeders' Cup board member quoted in this Christ article saying there was no way we would have gone back to Santa Anita so many times if they hadn't gone back to dirt. I think that's part of the thinking of Del Mar as they chase the Breeders' Cup. Bill Finley had an article in TDN where he talks about the fact that the impetus for synthetic tracks was safety. He mentions every study done has shown that synthetic surfaces are significantly safer than dirt surfaces. I take maybe exception to that, particularly since later in the article, Finley talks about Del Mar, which in 2012 had numbers that were higher than the average of equine fatalities. But then continuing on, LA Times article quotes Dr. Rick Arthur. He's the equine medical director for the CHRB. He says it was a grand experiment. I don't think it was worth $40 million. He goes on to say that the synthetic tracks were, quote, a novel technology and weren't ready for the heavy use we get in U.S. racing. San Diego Union Tribune says, RIP Poly and good riddance. And the Courier Journal reached out to the folks at Keeneland, and Keeneland says, even in light of Del Mar's decision, we are sticking with the poly track. And Steve, I mentioned on your show, on the radio show on Wednesday, I think there's a place for synthetic racetracks, weather-related. You go over to Europe, they call them all-weather surfaces, and I think we've seen it work in certain instances here. I think Turfway this winter's been so quirky, it's a bad example, but I think Turfway has pretty much worked out with winter racing over their synthetic surface. Certainly the Tapeta at Golden Gate and Presque Isle has worked. Other racetracks, it just hasn't been very good, but I would hate to see the California situation put at the death knell to synthetic surfaces, because again, I think as far as weather, they have a place in racing. But we talked on your show on Wednesday, you brought up the great point. They were pushed early on, synthetic surfaces, as being cost saving and being safety. And I don't know whether either of those have worked out. I think they've been more expensive than they were pushed in the beginning. And the safety factor, as I mentioned, the statistics that have been done on these synthetic surfaces are based on relatively new surfaces. These synthetic tracks have only been around a relatively short amount of time. And I think if you put in a new dirt surface, you'd get the similar safety results, because I think we're looking at dirt surfaces in these comparisons that have been around for a lot of years. And as you brought out on the radio, that underneath clay surface starts to get the dings and fissures and whatnot that contribute to the accidents and breakdowns and whatnot, whereas a new surface, that doesn't happen. When we're looking at the synthetic surfaces, they're relatively new surfaces. So I think these comparisons just haven't been fair as far as the synthetics. So as I say, weather-wise, I'd like to see synthetics stay around. As far as cost and safety, I'm not sure on those arguments.
Well, over and above the condition and the newness of any of the surfaces, has anybody understood where the racetracks are and the circuit levels of the tracks that are involved? You're going to compare statistics based on Del Mar, Santa Anita, Hollywood, Golden Gate, Keeneland, Woodbine, Presque Isle, and Turfway. Those are the North American surfaces. So you've got basically one C track when it comes to Turfway, a B track with Presque Isle, and a B track with Golden Gate, and then 5 A circuit tracks. You're going to compare the cumulative stats of that to the rest of the dirt racetracks that includes Fairmount, Suffolk, Philadelphia, Hawthorne, Portland Meadows, Philly Park. It's just impossible. And so the statistics. I mean, Bill Finley's thing in the Thoroughbred Daily News is just embarrassing. I mean, the lecturing and the pontificating. The death deals of Del Mar will. I mean, just stop it already. I mean, it is preposterous. This was a complete fool's errand. Keeneland, I'll repeat what I said this week on the radio. Keeneland should absolutely be vilified for what they did, because it was their financial interest with Martin Collins. They were complicit. They sold the industry a bill of goods. This was going to be cost savings and safety, and this is a panacea. And the thing was completely unproven. The only one that any really proven out is Tapeta, the Michael Dickinson product. The Pro Ride stunk. The cushion track had to be completely remixed at Hollywood and had organic, the dirt mixed in with it. I mean, the poly track has been a joke with the additions of the jelly cable breakdowns and all the other stuff that we learned over the last 7 years. So then Keeneland, they separate themselves and they sneak into the dark after leading the industry astray. Who knows how much handle this has cost the business? Then there's the money that went into this. And, of course, the CHRB and Richard Shapiro, they're equally at fault for what has been a complete, waste of time and money. The whole thing is a sad episode. The thing is, if it was truly well-intentioned regarding safety, and that was the core of the experiment, fine. I understand, and you can't knock that. But to me, there was a lot of financial self-interest involved in this, and Keeneland, who was just, the horse player's darling, they somehow are Teflon coated.
Yeah, it was sold as cost savings and safety, and as I say, I'm not necessarily buying into that. But Del Mar now moving to dirt for the 2015 season, and again, I think that opens the door wide open for them. I think they'll have a Breeders' Cup sooner rather than later. Adding into that, they'll
get the 15th.
Yeah,
they're 1 to 20.
Yeah. All right, we'll take our first break. When we come back, we'll take some specific looks at that racing at Gulfstream yesterday. All of that right after this as Loose on the Lead continues. Stay tuned.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Sepper kicking clear, and Go Sepper is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning. Seth Merrill in the studio, Steve Bick via phone from Florida. And Steve, before we get into the Gulfstream action, just wanted to touch on one more news item from the past few days. It was announced by NYRA that Frank Gabriel is now going to be the racing secretary as far as Belmont and Saratoga. Frank Gabriel has spent the last 9 years heading up Dubai Racing. Will head back to the United States to oversee the racing secretary job at Belmont and Saratoga.
You know, this is a really clever hire. And Martin Banza has got a lot of clever and interesting ideas. This bringing Frank Gabriel back to the U.S., the timing is really smart because with the introduction, for instance, of this new Belmont Derby and Belmont Oaks, which are going to be turf races, and I had Martin Banza last week on the radio. You can tell what he wants to do. He wants to really start to poach some international players, the same way he did when he created the American Oaks out at Hollywood and got horses like Cesario famously from Japan, knowing that New York is a much easier ship for horses from Europe. A guy like Frank Gabriel has got long-reaching international connections on every continent. Australasia and Europe, this is a really smart pickup. And for the people who don't understand the game and who really don't care about the sport, or who are really not serious about even being racing journalists, that are worried about salaries, that's their focus. The rest of us who care about the racing and are rooting for the success for NYRA and everybody else, you look at this and you say, this is going to bring another interesting set of horses and the potential to bring some major European and international connections to New York. And I thought it was a pretty savvy move.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance actually to talk about that because you were out of the studio last week on the way to Florida. But we talked a couple of weeks ago about the announcement of the expanded Belmont Stakes Day. Subsequently, they announced additional purses, and as you say, that the new turf races for 3-year-olds, which are going to be very interesting. So that Belmont spring-summer schedule is really shaping up to be a powerhouse.
Well, and I'll say another thing. Again, you get some people who write and say things so stupid, and just all they do is demonstrate how little they know about the inner workings of this sport. And for instance, when it comes to the set of races that have been moved on to Belmont Day, NYRA receives a higher rate of return and a bigger percentage of the simulcast dollars on Belmont Day. They don't, on every other day, including Memorial Day, they get their standard rate from the simulcast market. But they make an extra as much as 3% on Belmont Day. So for those that are too stupid to understand how much more money the association can make by basically priming that pump and getting as much major races onto that card as possible, that's why it's being done. So for those that talk out of both sides of their mouth, who criticize NYRA for not doing enough to make money, you can't criticize a move like this that is trying to help NYRA make more money.
Yeah, they're putting together a nice package, and it will be interesting to see how it all shakes out, because it seems like, as you know, the personnel they're putting in and the game plan they have is going to be very, very interesting. All right, let's take a look at some of that action from yesterday. You were on track down at Gulfstream, so we'll get some firsthand knowledge. We'll kind of take them in order right here. The undercard yesterday, the 4th race, we're going to watch the stretch run of the allowance optional claimer, which was the return of Normandy Invasion. Had been off since running 4th in the Kentucky Derby last year. Pretty long layoff, so you never know what you're going to see. Now, I don't know what was behind Normandy Invasion, but A, he did it right, and B, I think he did it in such a way that he signified he's going to be a real interesting addition to the handicap division this year.
Well, and it was anticipated, and Chad Brown not having the greatest winter down at Gulfstream, so this is pretty heartening, and it was a perfect return. The track was just crazy fast, so sets a new track record, and they had to use the Trackist timer for that because there was a timer malfunction at Gulfstream. They frequently have trouble with the seeing eye that on the run-ups. So in this particular case, a new track record, but it's a 100 buyer, and as you say, he didn't really beat anybody per se. So it's a very nice comeback, a great thing for Chad Brown and Rick Porter to build on. So they'll go from there. It was great. It was one of the nice highlights of the early part of the day.
Race 6 was a highly anticipated 3-year-old allowance optional claiming event. We'll watch the stretch run here. It'll be the number 6 Constitution getting it done for Todd Pletcher and Javier Castellano, part of his very big day. Running second here, Tonalist. I like Tonalist coming into this race. And again, given the way this track is playing, it's just hard to make up ground in the stretch. So I'm not putting any knocks against Tonalist here. Mexicoma runs 3rd off the layoff since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. To me, all 3 are kind of interesting going forward and probably moving into tougher competition. Constitution, the only question I have there, I mean, you've mentioned it. The track down at Gulfstream plays a particular way and maybe even has been a little more biased over the past week or so. And Constitution is now 2 for 2 in the career at Gulfstream. And as has been said, Andy and Jason on the NYRA broadcast in the springtime when Pletcher starts to move the horses north, they do note sometimes those horses just don't transfer their form. So I kind of want to see one away from Gulfstream for Constitution.
Yeah, he ran well. It's a 98 buyer in terms of the raw valuation. Tonalist, I thought, ran well in that he was wide and he kind of came out of his game a little bit. And that was by design. I thought Chris Clement and Joe Bravo, we got to give them some credit, recognizing that it was going to be tough to come from too far or far off the pace at all. So Tonalist gets some points for chasing and trying to chase from up close. Mexicoba is the horse that really comes out of this looking, I thought, the best in terms of what he had to do, because he lagged early and then came with the rally, was moving best of all late. I don't think he was best in this particular race, but that was a very good jumping off point, and I'm sure Team Valor and Rick Matee very happy with that comebacker for Mexicoba. Wicked Strong, I thought this was more encouraging for him. I don't know if Jimmy Jerkins had trouble with him or what the deal is and why that Holy Bull was so dreadful. He was rallying at the same time as well from the back of the pack with Mexicoba. So, keep an eye. I'm sure Jimmy Jerkins and Centennial would love to get a stake try out of him. But, Constitution, let's see where he goes from here. If he's going to stay around and go in the Florida Derby, those things a little bit in flux this morning. The only horse we know for sure that is planning right now to come back for the Florida Derby is Wildcat Red. The rest are all going to take a wait-and-see approach of the 3-year-olds that performed at a mile and a 16th yesterday.
Devona Dale, Only for You, I thought was very impressive. She's going to be a lot of fun on that 3-year-old filly trail this year. She went off as the even money favorite, wins by a little over a couple of lengths. As we watch the stretch drive, she'll be the number 3 horse. Number 5, House Rules under Alex Solis, runs second in here. But Only for You, again, it's Pletcher and Castellano, but as opposed to Constitution, Only for You does have a win on another track. She broke the maiden pretty impressively at Aqueduct. So again, I think she's absolutely the real deal.
I'm going to take an opposite view. No, she's all right. I mean, she's fine. She's just a typical Pletcher 3-year-old filly down here, and I'm sure she'll win. I'm sure she'll win other stakes. This race came back very slow. I mean, this was of the mile and the 16th. This was markedly weaker than the boys' allowance, and obviously the Fountain of Youth. I think low 80s, 83 buyer maybe. I mean, it was okay, but these are not special. Certainly not in the class of the fillies of like Untappable that won the Rachel Alexandra or the Charlie Pipke Dallas Stewart filly, Unbridled Forever, who's pointing to the Fairground Oaks. These were okay. I was rooting for Alan Jerkins to get House Rules by, and she ran game. But I mean, look at the chart. I mean, the top 3 finishers were 1, 2, 3 all the way around.
Yeah, and certainly they did not come home in a fast time. But still, I think the 4-for-4 record. I think she's going to be okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see. That's what horse racing's all about. We shall see. Canadian Turf. This one, we're going to watch the stretch run. It's going to be number 5, Reload, for Shug McGahee, who's been so nice on the turf over the past 6 months or a year or so. Certainly, Javier Castellano adds to his day here. Again, it's the number 5, Reload at 9-2, gets it done. Number 1, Mr. Online, will run second. Todd Pletcher's Salto, the number 6, will run third. Again, good effort from McGahee. And as I say, Javier Castellano, a nice neck victory there on a big day for Castellano.
Well, and this is fine. I mean, Reload. I thought Reload. I think it was my third choice, and certainly made some sense. And Shug keeps finding. It's pretty funny how he keeps finding horses like this. Maybe it took him a lot longer to put this horse on the grass than it should have. But clearly, he's a grass horse, and he's very solid. The performance from Ridelook took crazy money and was a low-priced favorite for a long time. Ended up, I think, at 7-2 when the gates opened. But he did not run badly, and I saw Gary Contessa afterward, and Contessa wasn't too disappointed. The horse, off that long layoff, clearly from last summer, that was a something to build on. And he only got beat maybe 2.5 lengths. So good start back for Rydaluk, and it was just a race, I thought, overall.
Yeah, Rydaluk has been ended the season strangely, and the comeback, as you say, been off since August in the Secretariat, but he was so promising early last year and then ended the year with a couple of duds. So, that may be a little bit of a promising comeback, just kind of one to make a foundation to build off of. All right, let's go out to the Fountain of Youth. And I'll tell you, on Racing Across America last week, I said a few times, I found Wildcat Red very interesting. He was the horse that was attracting my attention in here off of that Hutchison. I'm not sure if he's going to be a Derby horse as far as distance.
They're running. I mean, if this horse stays healthy, they're running.
I'm sure they'll continue as long as they can. I'm just not sure if I'm going to be on the bandwagon that long. But at a mile and a 16th, I thought he was very well set up off of that Hutchison. Given that 2 starts back, he went a mile and was a very close second to General A-Rod. Well, who comes down, not only comes down the stretch, but they went most of the way around the track and ding-donged it in pretty legitimate fractions. Now, given the way the track plays, they held on and kept that battle going down the stretch. But even with the track playing like that, those early fractions, you wouldn't have been shocked if they'd come back a little bit. All of that said, they come down to the wire. Wildcat Red just holds on. But you mentioned it earlier. Top Billing is going to run third in here, the number 12 horse, and he'll be gaining at the end. And again, that's completely against the way that stretch has been playing for a while now. So I tip my cap to Top Billing.
No doubt, and I don't think he loses too much in this. And they knew going in that if you're out in that 12-13 hole, really anywhere outside the 8 at this configuration, you are up against it. Kind of thought that maybe he could overcome it, and I think if that racetrack had been playing evenly, he would have overcome it. I mean, certainly at the 16th hole, between the 8th and the 16th, it became apparent that he was coming. But the racetrack keeps carrying Wildcat Red and General A-Rod, all the way through the stretch. So they absolutely are the beneficiaries. And you talk about the splits. They didn't go all that fast early, and they go right into that turn, and it registered 23. I haven't looked at the track breakdown yet, but they got a fairly easy quarter, and then they started to speed up at that point, and I think the second quarter was much faster. But it doesn't matter. That racetrack carried those horses. General A-Rod and really that whole Gulfstream Park Derby absolutely gives itself high marks, because East Hall, and East Hall was a horse I wrote about in my write-up yesterday, was a horse that figured to be, potentially perfect for the bottom of the exotics. That's exactly what happened. He finished his 4th at 73-1. So you get the first, second, third finishers from the January 1st Gulfstream Park Derby running 1, 2, 4 in here. You also get a lesson, I think, in handicap etiquette. There's very few turf horses. When you see horses like Medal Count and He's in Front and We Miss Artie, I don't care how many times and how excited you hear Connection say, "Oh, he's training great on dirt." If they've proven that they're turf horses, then that means they're not dirt horses. And you just if one jumps up every so often, there's going to be Barbaros, there's going to be Doulahan, there's a Patio Prado out there, but there's way fewer of those than the ones that are going to run lousy on dirt. And it's amazing when you look at the way that these horses get bet. I mean, We Miss Artie was 8-9-1. I'm not sure what Medal Count. Actually, Medal Count was a higher price, and he ran okay to be 5th. But don't bet turf horses in these races on dirt. It doesn't work. And we'll see where everybody goes from here. And we'll see if I think Shug will ultimately, he said he's going to monitor the track, and he'll see. But I won't be surprised if he comes back and runs in the wood with Top Billing.
All right, and just before we let you go, we'll quickly take a look at the 2-3-year-old races over at Fairgrounds. The Rachel Alexandra first, you mentioned earlier, Untappable. She was absolutely phenomenal, winning it 4-1, won by almost 10 lengths. Got Lucky for Pletcher, runs second. 3-2 Choice Streaming came in from California for Bob Baffert, runs last in the field of 7, and Rhea Antonia runs fourth in here, but certainly, again, Untappable for Pletcher and Winchell, very impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing week after week now, the Tappets, whether they're boys, whether they're girls, and very happy for Winchell. An outfit going back to his father, Vern, the late Donut King, very nice for them, and this was a big performance, basically, like her stablemate last week. I like this filly, and I like the Southwest winner too. So it's kind of fun that both of them are performing up to expectation.
Yeah, Tapiture.
Yeah.
And Risen Star, as you mentioned earlier, they ship over for Starlight. Todd Pletcher ships over with Intense Holiday. Does run down Albano in the stretch. Albano held on nicely for second. Running third in there was the 2-1 favorite, Vickers in Trouble, who had to overcome the outside post in here. So Vickers in Trouble had a little bit of an excuse. But maybe most importantly, coming out of this, again, they ship over and win with Intense Holiday. Intense Holiday, who ran third last time out in the Holy Bull behind Cairo Prince and Conquest Titan. So I think those two were flattered by the Risen Star yesterday.
No doubt about that. That was definitely one of the sidebars to that performance. And everything you said is dead on. In terms of Vickers in Trouble, no disgrace having to come from where he came from in that situation. And he sort of actually showed that he doesn't have to have the lead. I thought he ran very well before tiring a little bit. And that Albano was a bit of a talking horse in New Orleans this week. There were some people who kind of got on board. And so it looks like the Jones boys, Brereton Jones and Larry, they'll be headed toward Kentucky too.
Yeah, all right, a big weekend, and I'm sure you'll be covering and bringing in all the connections on the radio this week, so folks should tune in to At the Races on Sirius and XM. Steve, absolutely appreciate the phone call and the live update from Florida this morning. Travel safely. We'll have you back in the studio next week.
Yes, although we're going to go to New York, of course, for Saturday for Gotham Day, and so there's a chance you may get a report from Long Island next week.
All right. Well, we'll make it work however it works.
I appreciate it.
But travel safely on your way back. All right.
Thanks a lot, Seth.
All right. Take it easy. Again, Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. We'll take our next break. When we come back, Jenny Reese, the Louisville Courier-Journal. We'll get a little update on the Courier-Journal's media poll and how things shook up there with the races yesterday. Stay tuned. I'm Seth Merrill. Join me weekdays at 10 for Racing Across America. We'll look at important races from around the country, get insight from top handicappers and analysts, and preview the upcoming week in racing. That's Racing Across America, weekdays at 10, right here on the OTB TV network.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
And welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Always happy to be joined by our friend Jenny Reese from the Louisville Courier-Journal. Good morning, Jenny.
Morning, Seth.
And got you on board because, of course, every Sunday morning, the Louisville Courier-Journal updates its original Kentucky Derby media poll. You've done that this morning. We'll talk a little bit about how things juggled up, how things were shaken up by the results yesterday. But first, I wanted to touch on the specific races and get your thoughts on the two nice 3-year-old races yesterday from both Gulfstream and Fairgrounds. Before I do that, though, did you realize yesterday, my partner Steve Vick was just on. He was down in Gulfstream yesterday. I didn't realize this, but the DQ in the last race at Gulfstream cost somebody the pool.
Yes. I didn't see the race because I was working on my poll, but I heard the HRTV announcers talking about it cost somebody $1 million something dollars. Can you imagine?
Oh, no, I can't.
Check all bridges.
Yeah,
this morning.
exactly.
Yes. Oh, that's like the worst beat story. In fact, I hope somebody can track who it is because what a story, as heartbreaking as that would be. I mean, I just can't even imagine.
It's brutal. And we talked earlier, and I watched I had seen the race and watched the head-on as the stewards were doing the inquiry. And I think it was a deserved DQ, but deserve it or not, if you're the guy with the ticket, that has just got to be brutal.
Right. And no one will believe you, 5 years from now if you try to tell that story and say, you know what, I got DQ'd out of $1 million one time. Yeah, right.
On a 20-cent ticket.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, tough. All right, let's get some of your thoughts specifically. First up, we'll watch the stretch run going back to the Gulfstream Park Fountain of Youth yesterday. And Jenny, I said on my show all week long, I was talking a little bit about Wildcat Red. I found that horse kind of interesting coming out of the Hutchison last time. And given the way this Gulfstream Park strip is playing, he was going to be interesting stretching to 1 mile and a 16th. And that's kind of just the way it played. It was the 1-2 finishers from the Gulfstream Park Derby ding-donging it the whole way around. And we're watching him coming under the wire here. Wildcat Red winds up on top in the photo. All of that said, I think given the way the track is playing, you have to tip your cap to Top Billing as well, because I think the closing effort he put in the stretch was kind of against the way that track has been playing. So not a bad third-place finish from Top Billing as well.
No, absolutely. He closed from last, and Todd Crutcher going into the race was concerned about the speed, and his concerns turned out to be well justified. I mean, it served him well earlier in the card when he, won all those races, but Commissioners was in the middle of the pack and stayed there. He was the second choice, just a little bit off the odds from, I guess it was actually the third choice. General A-Rod was the second choice. But I did think that there was a scenario where Wildcat Red and General A-Rod, who are both very good and probably underrated horses, would have a great chance to succeed. It was this race, and especially Wildcat Red, who is bred to be a sprinter. General A-Rod got some pedigree to go 2 turns, and it's just hard to read that race. I think you got to give Top Billing a lot of credit for closing. You take a horse like Commissioner, who's a nice horse, so it's hard to separate those two. And although the bettors didn't have a problem separating those two, that was interesting how they made Top Billing such a solid favorite. But Commissioner couldn't do anything. And but just now, what I'm going to be interested in seeing is where some of those horses that didn't finish first or second go. Do they? I mean, Todd's already indicated maybe Commissioner isn't going to be running back at Gulfstream. Should run back in the Florida Derby and just hope the track's playing a little different, and that extra 8th mile, the extra 16th mile of the mile and 8th will allow them to make up to two lengths. Your top 2, I'm sure, will be going back. But I think that, one beneficiary could be Oaklawn Park, the Arkansas Derby. I wouldn't be surprised to see Commissioner go there.
Yeah, and I was talking to my partner Steve Bick earlier via phone, and he thought Top Billing, maybe the Wood would be out there for him.
For the Wood, yeah. You know what? I forgot about the Wood. You're right. Absolutely.
With McGahee being a New York guy, that's a possibility.
Yeah, right. Now, for Top Billing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, and because he's got, now I think Honor Code's on the Arkansas path. They're trying to make the Rebel, and then you'd think if they make the Rebel, then they would come back and run well in the Arkansas Derby just from a timing standpoint. So, yeah, you know what? Right now I'm penciled in to go to the Florida Derby, but I'm thinking I'm glad I booked Southwest, and I'm glad I got a free place to stay if I need to in New Orleans, because that's the same day as the Louisiana Derby. And I just, wonder if some of these horses will say, if the track's the way it's been, what's the point? But I don't want to take anything away from Wildcat Red and General A-Rod. I mean, those horses they've never been worse than second in their careers, and they didn't have, quite as snazzy the connections as as Intense Holiday, and as Top Billing and Commissioner. But they ran really well, and I tell you what, I was not really familiar with the trainer Wildcat Red, but he was on a conference call, the NTR conference call on Tuesday, and he's a great guy, Jose Garofalo, and he is somebody that you definitely root for, and he admits, he started out a breeder in Venezuela before he was a trainer, and so he knows what sprint bloodlines are. But he said the way this horse has started to relax, he thinks he'll go farther. Of course, it's one thing to go a mile 16, it's one thing to go a mile and an eighth, and certainly another to go a mile and a quarter. And sometimes horses also run their eyeballs out first time going a mile, 2 turns. And it'll be interesting to see then what happens the second time.
Yeah, I did the handicapping show earlier here on the network, and I sat in with Jeff Carl, former jockey, former trainer, and he said he had looked up some of the breeding on Wildcat Red, particularly the dam Racine, and she'd won a couple of kind of marathon-type races. So maybe the breeding on Wildcat Red is a little deceiving. We're all looking at the top side, and there may be a little bit more there in the tank than we're giving that one credit for. So, in fact, I said it last week. I said, stretching out to a mile and a 16th, I can see that. I don't know about a mile and a quarter in the Derby, but we all might have to give Wildcat Red a second look.
I never thought that Smarty Jones would go a mile and a quarter, and I never, and I wouldn't have thought, although he ran a huge race in the woods, so he was very live, but I wouldn't have thought that an Elusive Quality would have a Derby winner, and he sure had one in Sunnyside. So, like Wayne Lucas says, people have opinions, horses have the facts, and it is so true.
And speaking of, relating to the fact of where do they go next, do they stick at Gulfstream or move out of town? Well, the folks at Starlight automatically did that coming into this weekend. They moved out of town, Pletcher, Starlight, Intense Holiday, and in fact, it played to their advantage as Intense Holiday made a nice late run to just catch Albano. We'll watch the stretch run here of the Risen Star. It will be number 9, Intense Holiday, getting it done at 5-1. Albano at 13-1 runs second. And no shame for, this isn't the race, because I know the Risen Star wasn't on grass. But regardless, running third was Vickers in Trouble, the 2-1 favorite. And, no shame for Vickers in Trouble, given that outside post. That was a decent effort. I want to see one more from him. Opportunity, the Baffert horse runs fourth. I was hoping, I was going to say expecting, but I was hoping for a little bit more, maybe from Gold Hawk. That was a little bit disappointing, but of course they have Tapiture, so it wouldn't surprise me if they took a little different path now with Gold Hawk. But again, it was a great move for Starlight and Todd Pletcher to go over to Fairgrounds and kind of avoid the bias, perhaps, at Gulfstream.
Yeah, it was very good handicapping on their part, and the Starlight people, which of course a number of them are from Louisville, they were hoping to finish third, maybe second, and collect points. I mean, they sure thought he had a chance to win, and I guarantee they were all betting that way, which is, maybe one reason he was 5-1. But, he'd also been keeping real good company. And, the way he ran, you would sure think he's going to come back for the Louisiana Derby. And I thought Albano did well to, hang in there to just get beat a nose. And like you said, Vickers in Trouble, no shame, but he still got beat 5 in the half lengths, and it'll go a little farther next time, and he might get a better post. But I think he's a nice horse. I think he just crushed him in Louisiana bred company. I think he'd win. Well, he already has won a Great Estates in open company. I'm just not sure he's a mile and a quarter horse. My husband actually is in the same barn, and he says he's little.
Okay.
Not that size, matters. I mean, Northern Dancer was little, but but I'm with you. That was a very tough post to overcome, and he'd never been that far back. He's not a horse that needs to lead, but he'd never been in seventh before, in a full field like that. And I agree with you about Gold Hawk. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually came back in the Louisiana Derby, just because I think they'll keep Tapiture running at Oaklawn. And, what else are you going to do with Gold Hawk?
Yeah.
There's no two other thens that go anywhere. So, and I don't think they're going to run them, look to run them on synthetic when he never has. And it's happened. Just think of the Louisiana Derby last year. And, these races can mix up so much from race to race. And I'm thinking of Golden Soul, who, trying to remember where he finished in the Risen Star. And then he came back and what was he like? I forget. Maybe he was fourth in the Louisiana Derby. And then he comes back and he's second in the Kentucky Derby. So that's why it's the greatest race in the country to not just to win, but to try to handicap. I mean, you're sure rewarded when you're right in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, no question about it. And again, Intense Holiday coming over from Gulfstream. The other storyline there is ran third in that Holy Bull. So Conquest Titan and Cairo Prince, the first two finishers in the Holy Bull, I think were flattered by the performance by Intense Holiday.
I think so. And Conquest Titan, I'm real interested to see. They skipped the Fountain of Youth because the horse had lightened up a little bit and was getting hot, So that's something they've got now, 5 weeks to try to deal with. They've always been very high on this horse. And he's the only horse to have beaten, like you said, General A-Rod. And to me, Conquest Titan reminds me of North Carolina's basketball team. That he can be brilliant or say, how did he run so bad? But he might be like North Carolina, getting it right at the right time. So I think he's a real value horse. I'm kind of, they might have been just as glad they weren't in the race yesterday. The way, he showed speed in his first race, but now he's kind of settled into a closing style, and they might have been just as glad that they weren't there. But boy, there's a lot on the line for these horses with one race left, like a commissioner. It's pretty much, it is all or nothing. They got to finish probably in the top three in their next race, wherever that is, to make it to the Kentucky Derby. And if you're the commissioner camp, you got to think again with Top Billing. You've got a line on them. You beat him, in a very good race. He's Todd Pletcher's not that far wrong on horses.
Yeah.
And there was another reason that Intense Holiday went to Fairgrounds, partly because of the stretch. They thought it would suit them, but it was also to keep them separated. And and it was fine with the Starlight people, and I'm sure Bourbon Street had was lively last night with the Starlight people celebrating.
And then that allowance optional claimer on the undercard at Gulfstream also puts some horses in the mix, but they're going to have to perform in their next race. Both Constitution and Tonalist, I thought, looked pretty good in that race. And speaking of that, let's go over now and look at this week's Kentucky Derby media poll from the Louisville Courier-Journal. And again, I have it linked over on Equidaily. You can pick up the updated version every Sunday morning on the Courier-Journal website. And Jenny, since it came out last Sunday, this was before Monday's running of the Southwest.
Right.
So the new additions to the top 10 this week include Tapiture, who won the Southwest on Monday, Intense Holiday, who won yesterday, and Wildcat Red. They drop in. Tapiture drops in at number 6, Intense Holiday at number 7, and Wildcat Red at number 10. Dropping out, Commissioner Vickers in trouble, and I find this one interesting, also dropping out of the top 10, and I have no argument with it because I think he's absolutely behind the 8 ball, Shared Belief.
I tell you why I dropped him, and I also dropped him from my top 20. I think I dropped him last week just because I got to make room for some other horses, right? When Jay Privman with the Racing Form dropped him from his 20 on his Derby watch, nobody knows Jerry Hollendorfer better than Jay Privman. And not to say he can't get back in, but they're behind the 8 ball. He needs to get to where he's working, and then Jerry was quoted as saying he wants to see three works before he even decides where he runs. He might have one race, maybe something like the Bluegrass, and then the Kentucky Derby. And I just don't know if that's I just think they might be looking more at the Preakness.
Yeah.
What I kind of wonder. But what I found interesting about the poll this week, Top Billing did not drop. our top four stayed our top four. Carol Prince, and then Top Billing second, Honor Code third, and Candy Boy fourth. I had three of us have Top Billing on top. And I thought about moving them down, but I thought, no, you really got to, you got to put these losses in perspective. You're looking at this point, who do you think, your pick, if you had to bet today to win the Kentucky Derby, and I thought Top Billing, ran a heck of a race. He's got a great pedigree for the Derby. The distance isn't going to matter. I'm looking at John Ashworth's strong mandate on the top. I think that's what these people, it's not just who was the best this week, but who you're thinking at a mile and a quarter on May 3rd. The reason I don't have Honor Code a little higher, of course, is just because I know he's back working, but the setback with his ankles, I've got horses that haven't had any blips in their schedule on top of him. But I think it's a good group of horses. Caro Prince, I've publicly said if he wins the Derby, and he sure could, I'm never writing about dosage again because his dosage is 7. Would anybody be surprised if he won the Kentucky Derby? Absolutely not. Starting with Gary McLaughlin, who I don't know if I told you before, but when I called him in early January, he said, "You're going to be writing about this horse." That's not, Karen doesn't talk like that. Yeah. So I take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, I'm over on the ESPN poll, and I've got Caro Prince on top currently. And yeah, I didn't move Top Billing this week at all, just because, given the track, I thought that was a pretty good effort, so I have no arguments there. And Honor Code, to me, is not in exactly the same boat as Shared Belief, but is starting to get close. We got to see him get out there on the track, work a little bit, and then make it to that Oak Lawn race. So he's a little dicey. Jenny, before we let you go, though, got to wrap things up. But as always, and particularly today, got to get the update on Strike Impact.
And
that was the video. They eventually put up the Risen Star, and we did get the chance to watch that. But we mistakenly put up, because I'd called for the 2012 Diliberto. So if the fellas have that, maybe we can show it again. Number 5, Strike Impact, who just absolutely loves this fairgrounds racetrack, but has not been able to get a race on there. But he's in today.
He's in today, but so far they're still on turf. But Pat says there's no way. It's 100% chance of rain. And our rain comes this morning. He predicts it's going to come off again. So that would be like, I don't know how many times it's come off the turf. And he hasn't been able to run. But there's a race in the condition book next week, so if it does come off the turf, that's where he'll. And I'll be honest, at this point, I hope it does come off the turf, because that turf was soft yesterday, and I can't imagine it. It didn't dry out overnight, especially with the rain. But the forecast is for 100% chance of rain this morning, so. There you go. Strike Impact's in. That means it's raining.
Yeah, we haven't seen him since early November up at Churchill, where he ran a nice third in a turf event up there. But he's been entered a number of times. That fairgrounds meet has just been snake bit. And so we're rooting for you. If you don't get in today, we'll be watching for you in the next few days as well, and rooting for Strike Impact.
Well, I always appreciate that.
All right, Jenny, as always, we appreciate the visit. And again, if folks want to catch up with all the great Derby coverage and racing coverage in general, pop on over to the Courier-Journal website for Jenny's coverage. Jenny, thanks again for the visit. We'll talk to you down the road.
Thank you, Seth. Happy handicapping.
Thanks a lot. Jenny Reese from the Louisville Courier-Journal. A little earlier, we talked with my partner, Steve Bick, who is down in Florida, but will be on his way back a little bit later this afternoon. All right, that brings us to the end of this edition of Loose on the Lead. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, suggestions, looseonthelead@yahoo.com. We would love to hear from you. By all means, send us an email, looseonthelead@yahoo.com, or go over and visit our Facebook page. Loose on the Lead, we're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11 a.m. That means we'll be back next Sunday. In the meantime, enjoy the racing this afternoon. Cash some tickets. I'll be back in tomorrow with Racing Across America. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.